Hello and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Steve Recchia, Vice President at ERS. On behalf of myself and ERS, I would like to thank you all for joining our webinar today, which is titled Student Loan Consolidations, Helping Us Help Our Student Loan Borrowers. We've got a really great turnout today. As of yesterday, we had over a couple hundred people register. If you're having any audio or video issues today, go to webinar support, has an 800 number provided there. Call them and they'll be able to help you out. You should have received an email from us earlier in the day today with a link to download today's presentation. You can go ahead and grab it now, or you can go ahead and grab it after the webinar is concluded. During the webinar, there is a question box for questions. At any point in time you have a question, go ahead and provide the question. A little different format today, though. Instead of asking questions to the presenters during the presentation, we are going to hold the questions to the end. We did have some people that already submitted questions to us in advance. We'll hit those questions first, and then we'll try to get as many questions answered that come in during the webinar at the end as well. There's also an email address that we'll provide at the end, webinarquestions@ersinc.com. If you have any questions that go unanswered that you think of after the fact, go ahead and send them in via that email address, and we'll have our panelists take a look at them and hopefully answer those for you as quickly as possible. So without further ado, I will turn it over to the dynamic duo of David Glazerman and Denny DeSantis, a.k.a. the Bursar brothers. Gentlemen, it's all yours.
Hey, thank you very much, Steve. This is Denny, and well, my Bursar brother David Glazerman and I would like to welcome you to another ERS webinar today. ERS has done a terrific job in bringing an information-packed webinar to you by some of the top experts in this field. So David, my Bursar brother, I am sure you are as much looking forward to this presentation as I am.
Certainly am, Denny. Thank you, and good afternoon or good morning to everyone. Again, student loan consolidations have been an issue that's been talked about everywhere, in offices, at conferences, throughout the industry. And today our experts, we're going to bring you a lot of background information to help us in getting this process done in the most efficient ways possible. Again, if you have any questions, please enter those into the question box, and we'll be taking those later during the session. Our presenters today, if we can go to our next slide, we have Jamie Naprella from Great Lakes Education Corporation. Jamie's the Direct Loan Consolidation Origination Manager for Great Lakes, with more than 15 years in customer service, and has worked with a number of clients and school lender servicer partners through the industry. Our next presenter will be Jesse Brown from Nelnet. And go to our next slide, we can see Jesse. Jesse's the Direct Loan Consolidation Origination Manager for Nelnet. She also brings 15 years of experience in the education finance industry and is an expert in organizational process improvement and operational efficiency. Next slide, we have our other presenter today, Tim Fitzgibbon. Tim is a 27-year veteran of higher education financing. He's currently the Senior Vice President for the National Council of Higher Education Resources, INSHAR, where he's worked for the past 8 years. And for the sake of time today, because we have a lot of ground to cover, for some background about the student loan consolidation process, I'd like to turn this over to Tim.
Thanks, David, and thanks to Steve and the good folks at Enterprise Recovery Systems for inviting me to participate today. As David said, I'm just going to give you a fairly quick background, if we can go to the next slide or two, of the switchover in the consolidation process for the Department of Education. And then we'll turn it over to the true experts that will talk to you about how the new process is going. For many, many years, direct loan consolidation processing was handled by ACS, which is now a part of Xerox. They did a good job. They did that for several years. And like any process, when you have one company that's that's doing this for so long, some of the business processes they have in place, the relationships they had with guarantee agencies and others. There were, it was a smooth-moving process, but it was one that had kind of developed over time. And when that contract was expiring, instead of recompeting the contract, and I think we need to go one slide again further, folks. The department could have rebid or recompeted the contract for loan consolidation, but instead they chose to use a process where they can just move it over to one of the four TIVAs. So, that was fine in kind of in concept, but there was a bit lacking in the communication with the industry, with the guarantor industry, the private collection agencies working for guarantee agencies and the department, and then obviously for some confusion amongst the borrowers. So next, if you go to the next slide, one of the things that came out of moving the consolidation process to 4 servicers instead of 1 was now borrowers could have a choice of who was going to service their consolidation loans. And really, depending who you talk to, it's not entirely clear that the department necessarily made the change with the intention of giving the borrower choice, or if it was just a kind of a natural conclusion when you had 4 servicers working instead of 1. Whatever the case, it was a little bit controversial. Some had feared that that would bring pressure to schools to have to refer borrowers or potentially refer borrowers to certain servicers. I know our friends of the consumer advocacy groups have had some concern about if there's any inducements to move defaulted borrowers to a particular servicer and so on. Obviously nothing, there's no indication that any of those types of things took place, but it was among the chatter in the industry when those changes took place. One of the things the department did do is they created a new contract to support borrowers that are completing the loan consolidation applications online. So now borrowers who have questions prior to submitting their applications to one of the TIVAs can now have a call center to help them answer their questions. And I'm assuming that, and I believe HP has that contract, and Jesse or Jamie may have more information on that. If not, we can certainly get you the phone number that borrowers now have for that support. So for borrowers that are managing their own consolidations online, whether it's non-defaulted direct loans or even loans in default, if they find the consolidation process online on their own, then they have the option of choosing one of the 4 TIVAs that will consolidate and then eventually service their loans. For defaulted borrowers whose consolidations are being handled primarily by either their guarantee agency or one of the private collection agencies, there's a process in place to somewhat simulate or emulate the choice option so that there's even distribution of the new consolidations through the 4 TIVAs. There's a schedule basically that agencies send a consolidation applications to on a, I don't know if it's a monthly or quarterly basis where we finally landed, but it's a rotating basis so that over time you should have a fairly equal distribution of defaulted FFELP loans ending up with any of the 4 TIVAs. We go to the next slide. There's been some growing pains. I don't want to oversell this necessarily, because I think the growing pains came out of the fact that you had ACS Xerox doing this process for many, many, many years. They had relationships with the guarantee agencies. They probably cut some corners to streamline processes. I'm not saying that they were out of compliance with the contract, but I think when you go from any company that's had a contract and administered it for many, many years, and now you have a brand new contract with 4 agencies who are going to be very careful to do everything to the letter of the contract, you're going to have some growing pains, and I think that's what we saw. So examples like if a guarantee agency had a defaulted loan and they received a loan verification certificate from one of the TIVAs to give a payoff balance, for example, on the loans that guarantee agency held, if it wasn't returned timely, then the TIVAs would potentially go to the NSLDS and pull a payoff amount. In some cases, they would do that. It wouldn't be exactly the accurate amount. In some cases, when there was not good communication between the guarantor and one of the TIVA servicers, the guarantee agency's collection costs that they're entitled to were not factored into the payoff. So back in May, there was a pretty significant slowdown in April and May, both the timing of processing in terms of getting the borrower's loan set up, and also payments being made to the guarantee agencies. And so that obviously disrupts a lot of processes when that happens. I think there's been tremendous progress. We've had work groups working with the Fortivas to make certain that we're all on the same page, and I think while there's still a little ways to go, I think it's improved significantly. At this point, we do receive questions as to why the 7 not-for-profit servicers that are now competing more directly with the Tivas were not included in the consolidation process. There isn't any plans at this time that we're aware of from the department to do this, but obviously we've seen some changes in the way that the not-for-profit servicing contracts have been managed. There's been this transition to a more equal footing with the Tivas, and so I wouldn't be surprised if at some point down the road, as volume grows, that the NFPs may express more of an interest in participating. But at this point, it's limited to the 4 Tivas. That's all the time I want to take at this point, because I think we've got the more important parts of the presentation coming up. Jesse, I think I'm turning it over to you, and then I'll remain available to answer any questions that folks may have.
Thanks, Tim. First, I want to thank everybody for allowing Jamie and myself to come today and speak on the behalf of the new direct loan consolidation process. I think we have some valuable information that we're going to cover in these next slides. A couple notes before I get started that I want to kind of reference is the presentation that we're starting on right now. There's approximately 60 slides that we have included. Based on the time and making sure that we allow for questions and such, we are going to kind of shorten up the presentation a little bit and skip over some of the information so that you guys have the ability to review it. And then if you find that you have questions as it relates to some of the screen prints that we've included that we maybe didn't discuss during this presentation, definitely feel free to reach out to Jamie or myself and we can go into the details. So I wanted to just indicate that as we reference skipping some of the slides and moving on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right, within the agenda today, what we're going to look at is we're kind of going to look at 4 different phases. We have the phased implementation that Tim had kind of already spoke to. We have the eligibility of requirements. How do borrowers get eligible for having consolidating their student loans? We have the whole new direct loan consolidation process, and then we have the key processing of the loan holders and the servicers. When we look at phase 1, again, this was implemented back in January of 2014. During that time, the Department of Education made a decision to kind of go in the 2-phase approach, where from January to May, we were borrowers were able to consolidate loans that were not in default status. And then in May 18th of this year, we then moved forward with going ahead and having the default student loans included. So just a couple things that are, as it relates to the phased approach that I spoke on. Again, I'm not going to hit into this a lot because it's since been changed. It's more of how it was prior to the change. But basically, during that first phased approach, the borrowers had different websites they had to go to depending on if they had defaulted loans. Again, non-defaulted loans were one of the 4 Tivas, so the borrower would be able to choose one of the 4 Tivas to go ahead and consolidate their student loans. If they had the defaulted, one or more defaulted loans, then it would have been assigned to the department and they would have had to go through the other process that they were currently going through prior to the consolidation piece. When we implemented phase 2, which again was in May of 2014, all borrowers were able to use the new direct consolidation process. So what they would do is they would log on to studentloan.gov to complete an electronic application. And then within this process, we do also allow borrowers to complete paper applications. So if they log on to the website and want to print off a paper one, or they have the ability to request one from one of the 4 TIVAs. If they would call into our actual call centers, we have the ability to mail them out paper applications for completion. So one thing I want to note here based on a recent change is we have FIA listed as one of the TIVAs, Great Lakes, Nelnet, and Sallie Mae, and they have recently changed their name to Navient. So that was one thing that I wanted to make sure everybody was aware when we're referencing them as the TIVAs. You may hear of them now as referencing themselves as Navient. We're going to move into the number 2 of the eligibility for the loans. Basically, borrowers have the availability to go ahead and consolidate any FFELP or direct student loan. So listed here are several bullet points of what those loan types are. Outside of that, we do not, or there is not allowed for private loans to be included in consolidation, and then the other piece is for PLUS loans. So the PLUS loan, if they're going to include a PLUS loan in their consolidation, it has to be listed under the student. It cannot be listed under the parent of the dependent. So if the student wants to include it, it has to be listed under their name versus the parents. So listed above within the eligibilities, I'm just going to hit on a couple real quick. One area that we continuously work on is the health education assistant loans, and then nursing and Perkins loans. So some of those loans are where we've worked with other industries and loan holders to ensure that borrowers have the understanding of what the qualifications are as it relates to those specific loan types. Otherwise, we have obviously your direct sub and unsub and your Stafford federal Stafford loans, or subsidized, excuse me, federal Stafford loans. For additional eligibility, some of the things that we have to consider when we move forward with processing the consolidation is the borrower has to have at least one direct or federal loan like we referenced. They are able to consolidate their loans if they are in grace or repayment status. Noted there is repayment status also includes loans that are in deferment and forbearance. That would be one question that we get asked, is if that is considered as a repayment status versus non-repayment. The borrower, when they go out on or go online to select the consolidation, it asks them a question, and you'll see that in the screen prints ahead that gives you information for studentloan.gov, but they get asked a question if they have current loans in a grace status. And if they do have loans in a grace status, it asks them for the end date of the grace, and they at least have to have one loan in a grace status. We as the TIVAS group will then have to determine if that information is accurate, and in doing that we have to utilize NSLDS to verify that the borrower really does have a loan in grace status. So it's not necessarily the borrower's word as it relates to that. We will do a verification to ensure that they do have a loan in a grace status. If they do indicate that, we will then hold their consolidation until their grace ends. So basically, in today's world, we could have applications that we received in January, and if they have loans in grace that are up to 9 months, then we wouldn't look until October basically to start the process of sending LVCs and requesting and moving on with the consolidation. Basically, we get the application and we put it in a holding queue until the grace end date is getting ready to expire, and then we start moving forward with proceeding with the consolidation. Again, loans in school status are not eligible for consolidation. Borrowers can consolidate most defaulted education loans. They have to have satisfactory repayment arrangements made with their current loan holder, or agree to repay their new consolidation loan under one of the income-driven repayment plans, which would be your income contingency repayment, referenced as ICR, income-based repayment, IBR, and pay-as-you-earn. So the rules for consolidating an existing consolidation loan is, again, it has to be a direct loan, and they are able to add another direct loan or a FFELP loan into their consolidation, and The other thing listed below where it says the FFELP consolidation loan, it indicates different statuses that we've talked about in some cases. One thing that I wanted to reference is where it says adding another director FFELP loan. We have the ability to do that or the borrower does, excuse me, by completing an add-on application within 180 days. So if they want to go ahead and move forward and add on an additional loan, they have 180 days to do so. They also have the advantage of taking advantage of the public service loan forgiveness, so PSLF. If they choose to, or if they're chosen to participate in that, when they go to studentloan.gov, there is verbiage in there that indicates public service loan information. And at that time, if they select yes to that information, when they get the drop-down box to choose an actual servicer, it's automatically going to default them just to PSLF. So at any time that they select that information on studentloan.gov as it relates to public service loan forgiveness, that is the only servicer that will be listed for them to participate with, as FIA is the PSLF current servicer. And then the other last thing is just taking advantage of the no accrual of interest and benefits for active service members. So I think I need to go back. Hold on real quick. All right. So weighing the benefits of the consolidation for Perkins loans, again, I'm just going to kind of summarize some of this information up, and then you guys can read additional information and let me know if questions are needed. But basically, Perkins loans consolidated into the direct loan will always be under the unsubsidized portion of the direct consolidation loan. Why the borrower gains the benefit, they also lose the benefits associated with the Perkins loan program. So basically when they start over with wanting to do consolidation, they will lose their benefits of any Perkins loan program. They may qualify for cancellation of some or all of their Perkins loans to exchange within the public service, and these cancellation benefits are lost when the Perkins loans, again, are included in the consolidation. The interest does not accrue with Perkins loans when they're placed in a deferment. However, the unsubsidized portion of the consolidation, borrowers are responsible for the interest that occurs during that time. And then the last piece is Perkins loans generally have a lower interest rate, but they at least have the period of a 10-year flexibility. Rehabilitation versus consolidation. Rehabilitation is their defaulted loan before consolidating. The consolidation is without a rehabilitation is the borrower's credit record continues to show that the loan was defaulted but not paid in, but then paid in full. They also remain on the credit report up to 7 years. Rehabilitation before consolidation is the defaulted loan, direct loan, and FFELP loan requires the borrower to make at least 9 full-time on payments with arrangements, and after the borrower rehabilitates the defaulted loan, the loan holder will update their credit report so it no longer reflects in a defaulted status. So now we're going to go into some information as it relates to the actual studentloan.gov. So here is basically some of the things that the borrower will see when they log on to studentloan.gov to complete an application. They will get to choose their loans and their servicer. The servicer, each time borrowers log into studentloan.gov, the listing of the servicers will change. It's not based on alphabetical order. It basically rotates each time there is an individual that logs into the site. And they have repayment plan selections, terms and conditions, an area for borrower reference and information, and to review and sign the application. So when the borrower logs on to studentloan.gov, it will automatically sync up to NSLDS and include the borrower's federal education loans within that application. At that time, the borrower will use their authentication PIN number to be able to include all that information, and then they will be able to select the loans that they want to include or add additional loans that they may not want to include in the consolidation. One thing to note is studentloan.gov currently has an edit in place where it only holds up to 30 loans. So if the borrower wants to exceed the 30 loans, they'll have to do an add-on to do so. The borrower, again, we talked about this, they have the ability to delay the process of the application to support if they have currently one loan in grace status. The borrowers will then again be able to pick that information and the TVIS will review. They have the option to choose their federal servicer. They have the ability to select a repayment for the consolidation. The repayment plan information also comes in the consolidation promissory note application file that we get from studentloan.gov. So when we get the actual physical borrower, the promissory note, we also would get the repayment plan information within that file layout that we receive. One thing also is the spouse information. They have the ability to have a spouse enter in information as a co-signer on their IDR request, but the spouse can enter it in while they're logged in, or they can re-log in to enter that information. And then also they get within the system as it relates to their tax information. There is a link included in the studentloan.gov demo that has where they will receive their IRS tax return information included in that, so that it will pull back all their IRS information within their tax return and provide that information to the TVIS also. So when we move on to the next slide, which starts at slide 27, I think, or 26 on this document, this is all the different print screens as it relates to what studentloan.gov looks like. This is an area that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because of the fact of the sensitive and the time that we have. So what I would suggest is that everybody takes a little time and reviews these slides up until slide 47, and then let Jamie or myself know if we have questions. I'm going to kind of go quickly through this and then turn it over to Jamie to go into details as it relates to the loan holder information. So this is where they would start the application process. This is where they have the ability to choose their lender or their loans and their servicers. Again, at the bottom you'll see where we have highlighted in red they can add additional loan information. Here's where they can go ahead, it displays their actual loan type and where they can choose F for Federal Perkins loans. At the bottom you'll see where it says the balance and the current interest rate for the loan. This is where they will, this screen advises them where they can choose their servicer. At the bottom, you'll see the middle section. It references the grace period, and that's where they'll be able to select if they want to delay the processing based on the grace period. Here's a section of repayment plan information. So again, this will reference out all the different repayment plans available and kind of giving them monthly payment information and summaries of all of that information for them to review. And then at the bottom, they have the ability to select the repayment plan. Spousal information. This is where they can select one of the spouse options for them to be a co-signer for the IDR. Below is the IRS tax return information, so this is a link again that's provided for them to link into the IRS tax information. And again, here's just all the repayment tax or IRS stuff that we're going to go ahead and skip over. And then at the end, they'll have their terms and conditions that they will review and verify. Here's where the borrower has the ability to enter in there, or they'll need to enter in reference information. One thing to note here that we definitely want to encourage people to advise their students to do is verify that their borrower demographic is accurate. There is nothing that actually edits the borrower to make any changes or to actually puts any red flags to review it. We're finding a very high return rate of information that we're sending out to borrowers that are coming back with invalid addresses. So we definitely want to make sure that the borrower gives us their most updated address so that we can get information sent out to them timely. And then they'll review and sign the application. Once they sign the application and confirm, at that point it will go ahead and give them who they chose for their servicer and the servicer's contact information. So they then would be able to contact their servicer to follow up review, follow up on the actual application and the timing of the processing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jamie now to go over the application process for the consolidation servicer. Jamie, are you there?
Jesse, can you hear me all right?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to get started here, and next phase of this is we're going to talk about the key actions by the consolidation servicer. So what is our role as the consolidation servicer? What we're going to do is we take in the applications, whether it's electronic or paper applications, and we follow up with the applicant as necessary, making sure that they're eligible for the applications that they have applied for. And then we're going to send out an LVC certificate to the loan holders to verify the loan payoff information. And this is a key component because the new requirements of the TIVAs is that we book the loans 30 days from the date that we receive the borrower's application. It's very important that all the loan holders get those LVCs back to us within 10 business days. So that way we can make sure that we're able to validate all the payoff information and then disclose to the borrower all the loans that they're including in the consolidation loan, and make sure that they don't want to make any changes on those and everything's accurate before funding those loans. So we send out a loan summary statement to the borrower 10 business days prior to actually funding those loans, and giving them that chance again to make any loans changes or cancel their application. After the 10 business days, we then proceed with our funding. And funding takes 3 business days. So as you can see, we're under quite a tight deadline, and that's why a lot of the TIVAs are in requirement, or we have a requirement to utilize NSLDS to get the payoff information in the event that we actually don't get the LVC. Upon completion of the borrower confirmation period or the loan summary statement, we then initiate a payment request from Treasury. So we send daily a file to the Department of Education. They approve that file, and then they send it to Treasury. And the payment is made either by check or ACH, depending on how you're actually set up with the Department of Education to receive that funding. We determine the applicant's eligibility for the repayment plan that was selected. And then we're required to, again, allow the borrower to add any additional loans within the 180 days after the first disbursement of their initial application. So we process the add-on applications. And then we begin servicing and then report those to NSLDS. So now we're going to walk through what the loan holders and servicers' key processing steps are and what your roles are. So you basically have the same role that you always did in the past, and that is that you're going to be receiving the LVCs. You need to make sure that you're responding back timely, and that you need to also make sure that when you get the payoffs that you're processing those payoffs, and then you're submitting any over/under payments. So timely completion of the LVCs within 10 business days. For the Perkins loans, the verification certificate is mailed to the school or the third-party servicer per whatever your requirement was. So a lot of schools use a third-party servicer, and we will work with that third-party servicer to send the LVCs to them based on the delivery method that you choose or that they're set up as, if you do tell us that you have a contract with one of those third-party servicers. Then that should be completed and again returned. So we can't stress that enough. Then you will, as the servicer or as the school of the underlying loans, you will report to NSLDS that those loans are paid in full after you receive the payoff information and you apply it. And that's something that you've always been responsible for. And then you work with the consolidation servicer, meaning the TIVAs, to resolve any over or under payments. So what we did at the beginning was we had close to 3,000 loan holders that needed to be set up in order to be able to send them the LVCs and the payoff manifests. So what we did was we kind of took a divide and conquer approach where we split up that 3,000 by each of the 4 TIVAs, so that way you would only be receiving outreach by one of the TIVAs and then completing one setup form, then sharing that. And after we started and we did that, it just made more sense that we just designated one of the TIVAs to be the primary point of contact for those setups and communicate that to all the TIVAs. So Great Lakes was designated as the primary point of contact, and we have here a Great Lakes Special Implementation Team with a phone number and an email address that you can work with us on completing the required setup form to say how you want to receive those LVCs and those payoff manifests. And then we communicate that to all the other TIVAs. And then we have some reconciliation in place where weekly we're in communication and we're gathering the setup data to make sure that each of us are setting those up and we have the same number of setups. So if you have not been contacted or you have not been set up for the new process, we highly encourage you to do so. We have received applications from students with loans at schools or loan holders that are not yet set up, and without the main setup, we're not able to process those students' applications because we don't have a place to send the LVC. Or we would utilize NSLDS, which also isn't in the best interest of the student or yourself, because you would be receiving a payment that you didn't necessarily complete an LVC for. So the initial setup for the schools is that you need to come up with a funding preference. So all schools were initially set up for checks. The Department of Education is doing away with checks per the Debt Collection Improvement Act of 1996. And they're asking that schools switch to ACH by September 30th, which we're now past that date. So I highly encourage you to reach out to them and get set up for ACH if you're not set up at this time. You can contact the FSA Accounting Division, and here's the contact information to be able to provide to them your ACH instructions and get away from the ACH, or get away from the, receiving the checks. So again, just to kind of recap what the setup process is, you need to establish a delivery method for receiving LVCs and payoff manifests. The TIVAs will work with you. We really encourage you to not utilize paper methods, as it just prolongs the process. It makes for more error. There's a lot of data entry involved and verifying that the information is correct. So as much as we can utilize the electronic methods, we encourage you to do so. Each of the TIVAs actually have a loan holder website that we've designed to be able to send you LVCs, receive those LVC requests back, and then send you the payoff manifests. And so that's really our preferred delivery method. So you can complete that setup form. You can reach out to Great Lakes, send that to us. And that's for both the LVC requests and the responses. So I kind of talked about encrypted email is an option, and SFTP, and then the paper LVC. So we have various delivery methods, and we'll work with you on that. But again, I can't stress encrypted or electronic is best. Okay, so schools with park and loan servicers. Again, we will work with your third-party servicer to be able to send them LVCs and file transfers and receive the payoffs. You should not fill out the data forms if your servicer will be handling that process for you. And we've established relationships with pretty much every third-party servicer and have them set up. So that process seems to be working quite well. The current LVC with the expiration date of February 28th will remain valid for use until OMB has approved the new version that is being reviewed as we speak and should be out for release soon. The school or the Perkins servicer will be responsible to populate the LVC upon receipt. The LVC will not be populated with any loan information from NSLDS, so that's not something that's being pre-populated. However, I will say that some of the TIVAs have on their loan holder websites, when we send you the LVC, or we notify you that you have an LVC to complete, you log on. Great Lakes, for one, will pre-populate the LVC with the information that came in on the application, which kind of streamlines the process and allows you to not have to enter in all of that information. We just require that you review it and make sure that it's all still accurate and make updates as applicable. So that streamlines the process significantly. When completing those LVCs as a school or a school servicer, it's really important that all the information that's on them is correct and accurate. Otherwise, it creates errors on our end that we need to do research for. One common error that we noticed, which I believe is pretty much cleaned up now, was a lot of schools were just writing in Perkins instead of putting in the loan type F. That was a common error that will error in our system. Okay, and then you will receive 3 business days prior to funding. You will actually receive an email from the TIVAs letting you know that we're setting up funding and giving you a manifest and a dollar amount as to the funds that you should expect to receive. When FSA releases those funds, Treasury releases those funds, you'll also get an email that comes from Oracle, and that one also tells you that they're sending the funds to you. So those are notifications. You can then match those up. They have a manifest number on them, and you can match those up to the manifest that's on the ACH and the addendum record or on the check, which will help you then reconcile. So if you receive an email that says that we funded $100,000 to you and it's got a unique manifest number, and then you get all the detail for all the loans that make up that $100,000 on the manifest, then when you get the cash for the $100,000, you can tie those two together. Okay, and then it's just, again, important to report all of those to NSLDS. There's a lot of functionality within NSLDS to tie the underlying loans that are being paid in full by consolidation to the new consolidation loan. And so once that step is completed and you report that, then everything ties together in NSLDS appropriately. So one new step of this new process, I should say, is ensuring that the data within NSLDS is accurate and the data integrity is there. For over and under payments, we have new procedures, we have new templates, new files that we use for over and under payments. I know many of you are used to being able to kind of combine the over and under payments. We don't allow that any longer. The over payments and the under payments have to be separated out on those transmittal files. So if you need copies of those, reach out to any of the TIVAs, and we have those, and we can provide those to you, which are the same format for all the TIVAs. To try and streamline that a little bit, there are tolerances for submitting over and under payments. The tolerance for under payments is 25 or more. So if you receive a payment that doesn't pay the loan in full and the shortage is $25 or more, then the consolidation loan servicer will make that payment. If it's less than that, you can write that off. For overpayments, the tolerance is $10. So if a consolidation overpays the loan by $10 or more, you're responsible for returning that If it's less than $10, you can keep that. Now, for returning that overpayment, the TIVAs, again, just like FSA and Treasury are trying to do away with checks, we also are trying to do away with checks in regards to you sending those back to us for overpayments. We prefer you sending back to ACH. And these are just some references that we have, some links with some references that the Department of Education has published, which would help you in regards to this new process. The websites, and then each of the TIVA's contact information can be found at the end of this presentation. Okay, so there were some questions that we had submitted as part of this, and we just wanted to walk through what some of these were. These are some very frequently asked questions as well. So one of the questions that we received was, can or should a husband and wife consolidate their loans together? So spousal consolidations are no longer valid, so no, a married couple may not consolidate their individual federal education debts into a single direct consolidation loan as joint borrowers. Should or can you consolidate while you are in your grace period? Yes, however, once the grace status loans are consolidated, borrowers will lose any remaining grace period. So as Jesse indicated, there is a way for the student to indicate on the application that they want their application held until their grace period end date, and they need to put that date on their application, and then we will hold it, allowing them to be able to get their full grace period. If they don't put that on their application, then they will lose their grace period. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of the consolidation if you already have your loans with one servicer? Some of the advantages that we've noted are one lender, one monthly payment. So even though they have all their loans with one servicer, maybe they're making multiple payments. No minimum or maximum loan amounts or fees. So there's no minimum amount required to qualify for direct consolidation loan, and it's free. The reduced monthly payments. So direct consolidation loan can ease the strain of a borrower's budget by lowering the borrower's overall monthly payment on their loans. There is a weighted average interest rate that is calculated out when they consolidate all of their loans together, and in a lot of cases that benefits the borrower. Retention of their subsidy benefits. There's two possible portions to a direct consolidation loan, a sub and an unsub, and then the borrowers are able to retain their subsidy benefits on most types of their subsidized loans that are consolidated. And that's why we ask that when all the loans are responded to on the LVC, that it's indicated what the subsidy component is so that the borrower can maintain those subsidy components on their new consolidation loan. Will the consolidator suggest different options for you based on your situation, or you pick from a menu? And I think that we'll need to get some clarification as to what this means. What really happens is when they select, they get their options of the repayment plans. It kind of the whole process, application process, walks them through it, and the borrower is able to determine what is in the best interest of them for their new consolidation loan. Can we now consolidate private loans or institutional loans with federal loans, and what are the requirements and the rules and regulations? So private loans are not eligible for consolidation. However, they are included in the borrower's total indebtedness used to determine the repayment period. And so a lot of questions have been raised. Why do I need to include all of the students' loans when I'm completing the LVC, even if those loans are not eligible for the consolidation? And it's usually, or it's used because it's calculated into their total indebtedness, and it's in the borrower's best interest. Explain how and if the FFEL and direct loans are handled differently for consolidation. Really, the direct loans get all the direct loan benefits, and again, they are held by the Department of Education. they get, in the event that they qualify for public service loan forgiveness or teacher loan forgiveness, they have those benefits. We're drafting a frequently asked questions document, which will have a lot more detail in regards to these questions, so we can highlight all of those and then send those out. And I think we're going to be planning on for a future webinar, which will give you all those examples or all those answers, so that way you can reference back to them. So can nursing loans be included in the consolidation loans? Nursing loans are eligible to be included in the consolidation loan. So basically, all of the health professional loans sponsored through the U.S. Department of Education, Health and Human Services, and other federal education loans are eligible to be consolidated. Other loans would be your health profession student loans, so your HPSL loans, health education assistance loans, your HEAL loans, your loans for disadvantaged students, meaning your LDS loans, and then your nursing student loans. Is there a way to go on each website and check the status of the LVC that's been completed? Some of the TIVAs are still working on implementing new processes within their loan holder websites. Great Lakes has the ability to do that. You can log in, and we have a new online functionality where you can see what the status of that LVC was that was completed, and if it's been completed or if there's errors with that LVC. And so we do have the ability. Again, there's Nelnet's working on it. Sally Mae and FIA also have online functionality, but we don't know, and we should get back to you on what their exact functionality is and then whether or not you can tell that information. So we'll take that question back and get some answers to that. So we thank you for that question. Are the TIVAs going to be requiring ACH for overpayments, or will we be able to continue to send paper checks? We're going to be requiring that everything be sent back ACH. So if you haven't been signed up for ACH yet, we'll need you to go ahead and do that. How do I handle returning overpayments? Each of the TIVAs, like I said, we have our overpayment instructions, and we will provide ERS with a copy of those instructions for all the TIVAs so they can send that out to all their clients, and you'll have the templates that are needed and then all the instructions along with the ACH instructions for returning the overpayments. If you sign up for the loan holder website, we really think it's a one-stop shop for each of the TIVAs, where you can do your LVCs, get your payoff manifests, and process both over and under payments all in one place. So we think that that's in the best interest of all of the schools and all the loan holders. So we'd encourage you to utilize that for the over-under payment process. You can submit any other questions to this email address, webinarquestions@ers.com.
Jamie and Jesse, we have several questions that have already come in. We'll put out there for you right now. One question was, it really seems hard to void a consolidation request for a Perkins loan. Is there something that the school or the servicer is doing wrong?
So can you repeat that one more time, David?
It seems really hard to void a consolidation request for a Perkins loan. And the questioner asks, am I doing something wrong?
Okay, to void the request?
To void the request.
Okay, so what we're getting a lot of is, so the borrower submits their consolidation application, and we send out the LVCs to the schools. And a lot of schools are reaching out to their students to just let them know what the repercussions are on and what it means to include the Perkins loan in their consolidation, and make sure that they really want to do that. And sometimes the students are indicating that they don't want to do that. What needs to happen is we cannot get an LVC back from the school indicating that the student no longer wants to do that. It has to come from the student. So the student needs to contact the servicer that they selected and indicate that they no longer want to include that loan in the consolidation. The school is still required to respond back with that LVC with the payoff information, and then part of that loan summary statement validation, that 10-day window that we give a student to review and determine if they still want to consolidate and what loans will be included in their consolidation, that gives them the ability to call and make those changes. So again, all those changes to which loans they want to include, and they don't have to come from the students. So the school's part is easy. They should just be responding back with those loans, and we will determine the eligibility and whether or not they should be included based on our communication with the student.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. We had another question. I know you mentioned that we're going to be seeing the instructions regarding overpayments. They're going to be distributed from you through ERS to everybody participating. But a quick question, should we know, if we do receive an overpayment, does the amount of the overpayment matter in notifying the TIVA?
Does the amount matter? Was that the question?
In other words, yes. Would you like to know if it's a small dollar versus a large dollar? Is there any threshold when you don't need to be notified?
So we need to be notified only in the event that it's outside of that $10 tolerance, and you're sending that back to us. So for whatever amount that you're sending back to us as an overpayment, you need to include the loan information for that particular loan that has the overpayment and send it back on that overpayment transmittal. What we as TIVAs do then is we wait for that deposit, and then we verify that the amount in the deposit matches the overpayment transmittal, and then after it does, then we're able to process the overpayments, reducing the student's loans by that amount and then reducing their consolidation loan.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. And for Marie, you asked that question. I hope that clarifies it. For another question came in for a borrower. Is there any fee to consolidate their loans?
There is no fee to consolidate their loans. Now, there are a lot of companies out there that are reaching out to students and completing their consolidation applications and charging them an astronomical amount to do that. And we really encourage schools and any other loan holders and guarantors to let students know that this is a free service on studentloans.gov. Any of the TIVAs can assist them with that process, and there's no need to be charged for this service.
Okay, so I think that is important. As we're talking with borrowers, I mean, these days a lot of counselors are offering services on a fee basis to do a lot of things, which means they may be doing nothing for you when in fact your borrowers can get this help free. We have another question about more of a specific case. Who do we contact if we have not received the consolidation payment and it's been more than 2 months since the application was completed?
You should be reaching out to that servicer that had received the application. So keep in mind that in order for the TIVAs to actually fund the loan, we have to be able to have the LVCs back and have no errors on that application to be able to set up funding. And there are some times, like we said, that not all of the servicers are set up to be able to send them LVCs. So because this is a new process, if we get an application for a student and we're able to get the LVCs back on all of their loans, except one of their servicers is not yet set up to be able to get LVCs, we're not able to proceed with that application. And that could be one of the reasons why it's being held up. One other thing I want to mention in regards to that is a lot of schools are responding with all of the loans that are on their system, and they're expecting to get payment on all those loans that are on their system. The TIVAs are only going to pay you off for the loans that the borrower indicated that they want to consolidate. So you would know that because it would be on the manifest. There might be loans that are on your system that the student opted to not include in the consolidation, and you shouldn't be submitting underpayments for those loans because the borrower chose not to include those. So underpayment should only be submitted on loans that you were originally funded for.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie. I have another question here that's if you could explain the relationship between the TIVAs and the third-party collection agencies and the Perkins loan servicers.
Sure. So our relationship, our primary relationship is with the schools. So that's who our responsibility is for with communicating. If the school states that they're working with a third-party servicer, we will work with that third-party servicer on behalf of the school. We do not have a relationship with the private collection agencies in that we will not send LVCs to them and we will not send payoff manifests to them. We're not able to, based on our contract with the Department of Education. However, we've really established excellent relationships with the private collection agencies, utilizing their assistance with getting a lot of schools set up and working with them because we know that their goal is to get students to get out of default and to get these loans consolidated. So I think that we have a good working relationship with them, and we will talk to them about the consolidation application if they call us, and we have a information release consent form on file. But in regards to the LVCs and payoff manifests, we're not able to send that information to them.
Okay, so it's really important then that schools understand if the schools are not doing the LVCs themselves and they're trying to coordinate between their third-party collectors, their loan servicers, that they understand how that part of the process works and how that relationship is built. It is primarily the schools, and if they have given that responsibility to the servicer, let's say, they need to be able to understand that and track that. I have a question from Wendy. Actually, Wendy has two questions. The first one was that you stated earlier that defaulted borrowers with a guarantor do not select their servicer. Is this a change, and when does this, if so, when does this become effective?
So we should make a clarification to that, definitely. So we have, if a student just goes out to studentloans.gov on their own and they do the consolidation application and they have loans held by a guarantor, they do select their servicer. What Tim was referencing when he spoke about that was he was referencing a specific process that the private collection agencies have with the TIVAs when they're working with the students on behalf of the guarantors to complete the consolidation application, and it's a paper application, and then they have a strict schedule of which TIVA per month they should send their applications to, and so that process is kind of outside of the normal one, but we have a couple different ones. We have what's called a fast track process, and then we just have a normal application that the private collection agencies do, working hand in hand with the student, kind of hand holding them. But if a student just goes out to studentloans.gov, they will select their servicer. So it's kind of whoever's initiating the application, I would say.
Okay, thank you. And then Jamie or Jesse, can one of you tell us, are there any plans for the servicers to develop an automated line that borrowers can call and check application status in case of missing information?
Yeah, I can speak to this one. This has actually been something that's been brought up several times as Jamie and I have presented at other conferences, and we are aware that one of the TIVAs currently does support this process, and the rest of us are currently looking into this. As of now, we don't have any actual estimated time of completion if this is something we can go ahead and do, but we have taken this as a takeaway from other conferences and are continuing to look into the option.
Okay, great, thank you. Denny, do you have any other questions there? Okay, if not, I've got a few more here. Here's an example. Student is unemployed under repayment plan section and under the adjusted gross income box. Does the borrower enter an annual income of $0?
So when they're out in studentloans.gov and they're doing their IDR application, they would enter $0 amounts, and and we'd have to get more specifics. I'm not the expert in that area, and I have to touch base with our repayment plan team, and to get all the specifics. But we can get that information if you submit that question to us. Jesse, would you have anything else to add?
Nope, I agree with that.
Are the TIVAs right now requiring the same documents from borrowers if they're unemployed or employed?
They should absolutely be the same documents, yes.
Okay. Now another question from Wendy. Borrower uploads their 1040 into the application. Does the borrower still have to provide current income information?
No, not if it's the most recent year's tax information, they would not. Now, if their tax information has significantly changed, then they would need to send in a new pay stub to show us that it's changed.
Okay, thank you. Now, we have a question here. I think I can even answer this one. Just a reminder that Sally Mae is now called Navient. So if you hear Navient, that's Sally Mae's. That's just actually changing now. So for another question, let's see, we have here. Are there different timelines in processing the online consolidation applications, or are the TIVAs fairly consistent in that time frame?
The TIVAs, we have a requirement that was provided to us from the Department of Education that from the time of the application receive date, we have 30 days to actually book the consolidation. So basically, the TIVAs should be consistent as it relates to that piece. Keep in mind we do have exceptions out of that based on, let's say the borrower is in a grace status, so basically we're holding that application until their grace end date. Or if the borrower has a forced IDR plan, so some of the repayment plans that we're needing supporting documentation for, that might make the application exceed the 30 days. But otherwise, the TIVA should be holding themselves to the 30 days from the app receive date.
Okay. Thank you. Now, we have a question related to the overpayment manifest. Can that be submitted in advance of the return of the funds themselves?
Yes, it can. So if we receive that, we'll hold that, we'll load it to our system and then hold it until we actually receive the funds. And in some cases, if we don't get the funds within 48 hours, you'll see us do an outreach to contact you and ask when we can expect to receive those.
Okay. I have a question related to whether we can give our collection agencies access to the portal to check information as we currently do with our loan servicers.
That's not going to be something that we can do because the collection agencies have to submit an information release consent form per borrower, and access on the website is for each school, so that would basically be giving them view or access into every single account that school has, regardless if they had that account in their collection system or not. So it's at the school level, it's not at the individual borrower level. So that's not something that Great Lakes would be able to accomplish.
I have a question here from Lenora, whether or not the school can advise Perkins or notify Perkins borrowers by mail about what the consolidation options are.
So just to verify, if we're wanting to know if they can do an outreach to advise them the consolidation options, I mean, us as TIVAs aren't allowed to do any type of marketing to reach out to borrowers to do a consolidation as it relates to that. But if it's just in detail as it relates to the benefits of consolidating and why you would want to, I don't see a reason why that wouldn't be able to be included. Would you agree, Jamie?
I would absolutely agree.
And again, an educated borrower can be guided through this process much easier than trying to pick it up step by step. And usually, we're at a point with borrowers when they're approaching us, especially once we see delinquencies, it does become a more serious issue, obviously. I think we have time for just one or two more questions. Denny, do you have any questions there? I've got one or two here, unless you have some on your side.
Yeah, this one is one from Wendy as well, and it deals with defaulted borrowers that are not in a current repayment plan. Which repayment plan is best for borrowers to complete the consolidation process to get out of default? Would it be an ICR or IDR?
So what we do is there are different, so every borrower, when we send the LVC out and we get that back, if their loans are in a DM status, meaning defaulted and not making satisfactory repayment, they have to be forced into IDR, ICR, or pay-as-you-earn. We determine based on their eligibility which of those plans they're eligible for. Excuse me. So it's based on what they're eligible for. So if they have underlying plus loans that they're including in the consolidation, they would not be eligible for IDR, but they would for ICR or pay-as-you-earn. So based on those requirements, then we would pre-approve them for one of those. They have to be pre-approved for one of those in order to be eligible to include that in the consolidation.
Great. One more question, David, we have time for?
I think we have time for one more.
Is the spouse income required for income-driven repayment?
It's not required.
No.
It's not required.
No. That's correct. It is not required.
Okay, David, I think we're pretty much out of time.
Well, Denny, thank you. I'd like to thank Jamie, Jesse, Tim for some very good material. I think we've gotten a lot of our questions answered on how this process is working. Before I turn this back over to Steve for some closing comments, again, I just want to thank you. I want to thank all of our participants for their interest and for their willingness to participate in educational events such as this. So for Denny and myself, again, our thanks to everyone. And Steve, we're going to turn it back to you for the last words.
Hey, David, thank you. I want to second your sentiments there and thank, again, Tim and Jesse and Jamie for doing a great job for us today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to be on the webinar today. We really do appreciate it, and you can tell by all the questions that came in that certainly the folks in the audience appreciate it as well. So we're looking at about 40 or 50 questions that were submitted. Obviously, we didn't have time to get to everyone's questions. I'll circle back after we conclude today's webinar, and I'll talk with David and Denny. We'll figure out a way to get the questions back to the whole group that participated today. We'll figure out the format to do that. But on Monday or Tuesday of next week, you'll get an email from us stating that the presentation plus the audio will be available for download so you can go ahead and review it. Again, we'll send out that email probably on Monday or Tuesday. Also, between now and then, if there are any more additional questions, we've set up a email which is webinarquestions@ersinc.com for everyone to submit any final questions that, again, weren't asked today. So take advantage of that, and we'll make sure we get back to everyone with the responses. So again, that wraps it up on our end. I want to thank everyone for participating. We do have a post-webinar survey. Please take the time to complete that. That does help us out. We're signing off, and for now, thank you, and for goodbye. Bye-bye.